In the hidden currents of human perception lies a silent art, the influence operation. It is the deliberate shaping of thoughts, beliefs, and actions. Not through force, but through suggestion, deception, and the quiet rewriting of reality itself. An influence operation plants seeds in the mind, nurtures them unseen, and watches as they bloom into choices that feel entirely one's own. Even children understand its essence. One whispers to a friend that another child is mean, spreading doubt without evidence. Soon, the playground shifts. Alliances fracture, loyalties realign. All because a single planted story took root. In the digital age, it takes on new power through voices that command millions. A popular online personality posts a carefully framed clip, a selective truth laced with outrage. Followers share it unchecked. Narratives harden, divisions deepen, perceptions sway, votes shift. All guided by a figure whose funding, direction to act, and motives remain veiled in the shadows. But at its most sophisticated, the influence operation becomes legend and nightmare. Tales persist of the Manchurian Candidate, a mind fractured and rebuilt, triggered by a word or symbol or frequency to act against its own will. Or the super soldier, forged in secret programs, loyalties rewritten, memories erased, turned into a perfect instrument of unseen masters. These are not mere stories. They are echoes of a deeper truth. To truly grasp the reach and refinement of influence operations, we must trace them to their origins, not in playground whispers or viral influencers, but in the shadowed laboratories and classified files of governments themselves. For it was there, behind closed doors, that the science of controlling the human mind was first perfected. The cradle awaits. In the shadowy fringes of Long Island, New York, where the Atlantic Ocean meets the land, in eternal unrest, stands Camp Hero, a forgotten military outpost shrouded in mystery. What began as a radar defense station in the Cold War era allegedly transformed into something far more sinister. The Montauk Project. From the 1970s to 1983, whistleblowers claim the United States government conducted secret experiments here, pushing the boundaries of the human mind and reality itself. Residents residing in and around the area also reported numerous strange occurrences and events. Linked to the infamous Philadelphia experiment of 1943, where the Navy ship USS Eldridge supposedly vanished in a burst of electromagnetic energy and then reappeared in a different area, the Montauk Project is said to have evolved from those early trials in invisibility and teleportation.
Back in 1943, during World War II, the government was experimenting with technology to make battleships like this invisible. One of the weirdest projects was called the Philadelphia Experiment, which involved this ship called the USS Eldridge, which was a destroyer escort ship. And the goal was to make this ship invisible by manipulating the gravitational and electric magnetic fields to create the invisibility cloak on the ship. They bring the ship out and the crew starts the experiment. Right as they were doing it, the ship has a green cloak around it and then disappears. The ship already appears 200 miles away. So it actually was successful, and the ship did disappear or turn invisible or teleport. And then it returned back to the harbor. When the crew returned with the ship, that's when it got really weird, because there was accounts of a lot of the crew being sick, nauseous, dead, missing body parts, driven crazy, and just not well. And the craziest one, some were melded into the ship and actually fused inside the ship. Now, this is a pretty controversial story. A lot of people don't believe it. A lot of people think that it was actually a gas leak and the crew was hallucinating. How did all the crew have the same hallucination? There is evidence of documents being missing, government making efforts to bury this experiment and not talk about it. There's a lot of accounts from Navy families and witnesses saying that they knew people or were a part of it, and that they saw the green flare and the crew being messed up. I was looking into like what happened to the ship after. It was transferred to Greece and then destroyed and eventually sold for scrap.
But Montauk went deeper. It became the cradle of psychological warfare, the birthplace of modern influence operations designed to control thoughts, bend perceptions, and manipulate entire populations. Discoveries and connections made at Montauk would further propel all types of influence operations.
Officially, Tavistock was about treating shell shock. This is what they used to call PTSD. It was trauma therapy. It was a beautiful cover story. But what they actually found, trauma doesn't just break people, it softens them up, makes them pliable. They were not fixing soldiers like they told everybody. They were testing civilians. They were running war psychology on entire populations. Grief, confusion, and fear. Tavistock used all of these things like tools in a toolbox. Once you know which lever makes a herd turn into a stampede, you don't need speeches or ballots anymore. You just pull the lever.
Figures like Preston Nichols, a radar technician and engineer who claimed repressed memories of his involvement, and Al Bielek, who said he leaped through time from the Philadelphia experiment to Montauk in 1983, brought these stories to light. Alongside Stuart Swerdlow, a purported survivor of childhood experimentation as one of the Montauk boys, they all described a program that extended the CIA's real MK-Ultra mind control experiments into uncharted territory.
What if I told you the CIA secretly drugged people to control their mind? This isn't a movie plot. It actually happened. In the 1950s, the CIA launched Project MK-Ultra, a top-secret program to study mind control using LSD and hypnosis. They experimented on prisoners, patients, even ordinary people without their knowledge. Some lost their minds. Some never came back. It was all hidden until documents leaked years later. MK-Ultra was real, and it's still unclear how far it went.
Here, at Montauk, the seeds of influence operations were sown. Techniques to weaponize the mind that echo in today's world of disinformation and psychological manipulation. Deep beneath Camp Hero, in hidden bunkers sealed from the world, the experiments began.
Preston Nichols claims a computer had to be used to calculate the time references of specific people and then replicate those references while the people were passing through the bottle, which is the alternate reality. Nichols said, quote, "The people inside the bottle would be going through zero time and essentially a no reality, or a disoriented one at best. The computer had to generate an electromagnetic background or phony stage that the physical being would synchronize with as well. If that wasn't done, the spirit and the physical body would go out of sync, thus resulting in insanity," end quote. So basically, the time reference would lock in the spirit and the electromagnetic background would lock in the body. This project began in 1948, but it was not fully developed until 1967, at which point a report was written and submitted to Congress, who'd already been funding the project, the Phoenix Project, Project Rainbow, all these projects. They'd been funding them up to that point. Now, the people responsible for developing this project, basically, putting human beings into time travel, they told Congress that they believed, based on their research, based on their experiments, that the consciousness of a human being could 100% be affected by electromagnetics, and it would be possible to invent equipment which could literally change the way a person thinks. And Congress was like, no, hard pass. This sounds kind of dangerous and weird, especially if this tech falls into the wrong hands. For instance, our enemies. Officially, the whole project was disbanded in 1969. Unofficially, it continued. The Phoenix Project had been working out of the Brookhaven Laboratory in Long Island, about 60 miles from the Montauk base. Brookhaven is run by the U.S. Department of Energy, just like Hawkins' lab from Stranger Things, which was also run by the U.S. Department of Energy. Now, the folks at Brookhaven were also passionate about what they had discovered, the time travel and the ability to mind control people, and what it potentially meant for humanity and for war, that when they got turned down by Congress, they went to the Department of Defense and they said, listen, Congress is afraid of this. They're politicians. But you guys are warriors, okay? And we can promise to develop and deliver a device that will render our enemies useless in seconds with just the flip of a switch. Now, of course, the military wanted to know more, but they were like, listen, guys, let's keep this on the down low because Congress has already said no, and we don't need the general public or our enemies knowing what we're working on. But with that being said, how can we help? What do you need? Money, resources? What can we do for you? So one of the most important things that the Phoenix Project needed was a powerful radar tower that could operate between 425 to 450 megahertz, which was allegedly the frequency window needed to access human consciousness. Luckily, there was still a large and powerful radar tower not far away from Brookhaven at Montauk Point. The Camp Hero site was large, it was remote, and it had access to the water, which would allow equipment and experiment subjects to be brought in and out with little notice from the general public. The research equipment was moved from Brookhaven to Montauk in the early 70s, and the story goes that the Brookhaven facilities were recreated in a complex network of tunnels and labs located on several levels underneath the SAGE radar tower. Now, this is when some strange and unusual things, you might say, began to happen in the area. Remember the claims that have been made by people like Preston Nichols and Stuart Swerdlow, who say they were part of the Montauk Project. But there's no real or concrete evidence besides their recollections. But reportedly, the facility underneath the SAGE radar tower was expanded to include as many as 12 levels inside and under the radar tower, and several hundred workers were brought in. And this was a staff consisting of military employees, government employees, and then personnel supplied by different corporations, military contracts, things like that. Preston Nichols claims to have been one of those corporate employees, and he claims to have arrived at Camp Hero in 1973.
And from there, research was done, which I was involved with, of how to interface the mind of man to electromagnetic systems. The idea was you could fly your fighter plane by thought. Pure thought would fly the plane or drive the ship. But it evolved into essentially a mind control device, which is what they were really looking for. They wanted to be able to feed a program into an early computer, flip a switch, and everybody would respond to it. That was what they wanted. They never got that, but never could find a like a universal psychic signature for all humans. You would have to target each person individually. The individual targeting worked very well. Then it was discovered that since basically the project was nothing but a mind amplifier, that's all it was a mind amplifier. If the person in the input network could think of other times and fully flesh out the time in his head, this machine had the capability of generating that time, generating a vortex, different space and time. And that's what the Montauk Project eventually evolved into, a time machine. And yes, it worked. It didn't work all that well, but it worked. Many people got lost, but it did work. That, in a nutshell, is what the Montauk Project is about.
Building on MK Ultra's use of drugs, hypnosis, and trauma, Montauk allegedly targeted vulnerable children, the so-called Montauk boys. Abducted or recruited, they were subjected to electromagnetic fields, sensory deprivation, and psychotronic devices to unlock psychic potential. At the heart of it all was the Montauk chair, a throne-like apparatus that amplified thoughts using advanced radar technology from the SAGE radar tower system.
Here is Stuart Swerdlow and Preston Nichols in the documentary The Montauk Chronicles, explaining more of this.
Part of the breaking the psyche of the person to install programming, to fracture the mind pattern, is to make you uncomfortable. Because when you're, first you're cold, then you're hot, then you're cold, and the mind doesn't know what to expect, and after a while it fractures.
They'd leave a few pieces to be their normal awake mind, and then they would program the buried pieces. And then it was my responsibility to put them all back together again. So the programming is safe behind the trauma block. Now, if you're going to remove the programming, you got to remove that trauma block. And the idea there was, you going to go in your own horror world? No, of course not.
Okay, when you take a personality and you fragment it into pieces, they take one of the pieces and then they develop it into a sub-personality or a related personality, which is a little different than the core personality. And then they provide a code that triggers that personality to come forward and take control of the body. They were programmers, not handlers or controllers, but programmers who would only come into the room after I had been sedated, drugged, beaten. I was pretty much immobile, just laying there on the table fastened down, and then the programmers would come in. Then they would put the lights over the table, then they would fasten things to different parts of my body, particularly my head area. There were so many different types of rituals that involved astral entities, but one of them was to create the child as a vessel, so that the entity could enter the body of the child and animate it, and then those participating in the ritual would achieve the energy of that entity that was occupying the body. There would be a chemical type of smell. It would put things in my arms, in my legs, in my genitals, in my head, and then I would hear input voices over and over and over again, and then there'd be like this swirl. I would see this swirling vortex over my visual perception, and all the time I would hear mental voices telling me to be calm and it was okay and that I would be all right and not to fight them. You would get to a point where you just didn't even care anymore because you couldn't even feel the pain anymore. I think that was a form of dissociation, and that's what they wanted. They wanted you to dissociate, fracture the mind. That's how the programming begins.
I did see a couple of their sessions. It was disgusting, made me sick.
Can you describe a little bit of that?
I would just as soon die.
The amazing things that they could think of to create fear, anxiety, and fracturing. I don't know how human beings could even think of such things, but they did. And so, if you survived, maybe you weren't so lucky if you survived. Definitely, I did see people die. I saw animals being murdered. I saw people being murdered. I saw rapes of all kinds. And I suppose the idea was to desensitize from those things so that if you were programmed to do any of that, it wouldn't make you feel one way or another. It would be completely neutral to you because you'd been so downloaded with this for so many times. It was no more different than washing your hands.
This wasn't just about telekinesis or remote viewing. It was the dawn of mass mind influence. Techniques developed here could implant suggestions, erase memories, or program sleeper agents, laying the blueprint for psychological operations that infiltrate societies both subtly and profoundly.
Psychology is the scientific study of the mind, and in an enlightened society, it would be taught in elementary school. But we are not in an enlightened society. In simple terms, each human being is made up of three personas: body, mind, and spirit, each one with its own desires. And the universal goal of individual self-mastery is to serve the desire of the spirit. This takes great discipline, because as we are about to discuss, our mind innately seeks to control us. There is psychology and there is group psychology. In group psychology, an individual will suppress all desires that are deemed unacceptable by the group. These suppressed desires will invariably control a person without their knowing. This knowledge is nothing new. Machiavelli instructed leaders centuries ago to divide the people into groups in order to weaken and control them. Those in power have known this for millennia. The Yoga Sutras outlined a process of overcoming this thousands of years ago. It taught how a person could become enlightened to the true nature of the mind and liberate themselves from unwanted influence. The ancient writings of Sumer describe a ruling class which kept its power by keeping mankind spiritually repressed. 100 years ago, Sigmund Freud introduced this knowledge to the modern world. He wrote that the biggest obstacle to liberating yourself from ego was group mind, because in order for the individual to examine themselves completely, one must question everything, including the group. The ego mind has always been obsessed with group identity, and by nature, it seeks approval or control within the group. The key to manipulating the masses is to keep them ensnared in group mind. Freud's work held the key to individual enlightenment and was met with strong disinterest by the ruling class of Vienna, who had no interest in the liberation of the individual mind. Edward Bernays, however, Freud's nephew and protege, found strong interest for his uncle's work in America. In the early 1900s, the U.S. government and corporate America employed Bernays not to liberate the individual from group mind, but to keep us enslaved in it and manipulate our thoughts and behavior. In 1927, Paul Mazur of Lehman Brothers infamously wrote that we must shift America from a needs to a desires culture. Man's desires must overshadow his needs. The overall strategy was to divide the public and stimulate irrational desires. The only way of achieving this goal was by use of the media. A new reality was designed with the specific intention of making people more anxious, afraid, and aroused, keeping us in an unending, irrational fight or flight state of mind, where we only find solace in group mind conformity. All of this has been done without our awareness. And by 1975, the CIA had infiltrated all areas of news media.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to the national news services, AP and UPI?
Well, again, I think we're getting into the kind of detail, Mr. Chairman, that I'd prefer to handle in executive session.
In Russia, Vladislav Surkov, who studied economics and theater, was tasked with creating a world of fake news to keep the Russian people anxious and confused.
Surkov turned Russian politics into a bewildering, constantly changing piece of theatre. He used Kremlin money to sponsor all kinds of groups, from mass anti-fascist youth organizations to the very opposite, neo-Nazi skinheads. And liberal human rights groups who then attacked the government. Surkov even backed whole political parties that were opposed to President Putin. But the key thing was that Surkov then let it be known that this was what he was doing, which meant that no one was sure what was real or what was fake in modern Russia. As one journalist put it, it's a strategy of power that keeps any opposition constantly confused. A ceaseless shape-shifting that is unstoppable because it is indefinable.
These crimes against humanity are more apparent now than ever. But there are still millions entrenched in group mind who religiously accept the mainstream media narrative to be truth. Our mind innately seeks to control us, and if we do not take control of our own mind, the media will control it for us. The only solution is rugged individualism and critical thinking. But this is a path that few choose to take. And so in the meantime, whoever controls the media controls the herd. And nothing short of a miracle will ever change that.
Wilder claims emerged. Time portals torn open, connecting 1943 to 1983, allowing travel through hyperspace. Alleged collaborations with extraterrestrials exchanged technology for human subjects, yielding psychotronic weapons capable of remote suggestion on a global scale.
The Greta Treaty, so spooky, so creepy. A treaty made between President Dwight Eisenhower with aliens.
Yeah, okay.
The theory is there's two different types of aliens that came to meet with Eisenhower. The Nordics, tall, pale, beautiful-looking, human-like aliens. They offered Eisenhower they would speed up the technology to where there wouldn't be any more diseases, world peace, clean energy, in exchange for disarming your nuclear warheads.
Oh, that seems reasonable.
Then after that, these other aliens appeared, and they were the Greys, and they offered just to the United States, we'll give you advancements in technology, weaponry. You'll be the #1 powerhouse in the world. In exchange, you let us experiment on humans. And that's what they ended up agreeing with. The crazy thing is, it was actually reported in the newspaper that President Eisenhower died because he was missing. They're saying that he was actually at this Air Force Base meeting, but the cover story was that he had a chipped tooth and had to get emergency dental work. But there's no records of him going to the dentist or getting this dental work.
Official records show Camp Hero as a simple Air Force station, decommissioned without trace of underground horrors. Yet anomalies persist. Restricted areas, unexplained tunnels, numerous corroborated accounts from both whistleblowers and residents of the area, government documents that line up with the timelines and descriptions, and the core idea endures. Montauk was a pioneer in the art of influencing the human psyche en masse. The legacy of Montauk seeped into culture long before it was named. The hit series Stranger Things, originally titled Montauk, drew directly from these tales. Psychic children, government labs, portals to other dimensions. But this wasn't mere entertainment. It was revelation through fiction, desensitizing the public to truths hidden in plain sight.
The successful television series Stranger Things was based on this true story. Did you know that Stranger Things was originally going to be called Montauk? Or in the real experiments that took place at Camp Hero or Montauk Air Force Station in New York? Stories about the Montauk Project have circulated since the 1980s, after residents started having dreams and headaches following the installation of a giant radar. According to a whistleblower, Preston Nichols, The facility was created to explore psychological warfare techniques, which included teleportation, mind control, and time travel. However, only after the success of the Philadelphia experiment in 1943, Preston claimed that a real door to another dimension opened and something else or someone else entered.
From Montauk's alleged psychic warfare sprang the tools of today's influence operations, subliminal messaging amplified through media. Remote viewing evolved into surveillance states, and programmed minds mirroring disinformation campaigns that divide nations. During the Cold War, these techniques could sway elections or erode enemy morale. Now, they live in algorithms that shape opinions and hybrid warfare that blurs truth.
What we have here is when you're consuming content like this, anything on YouTube, anything on Instagram, TikTok, X, it's something that's been curated for you. It's literally been individualized to you. It's feeding you a feedback loop in order to keep you there. I'm at the point now where I don't know what I actually think and don't think. None of us really do, because everything has been curtailed by what we consume. So whether it's foreign actors, whether it's whoever controls the algorithm controls the people.
Survivors like Stuart Swerdlow spoke of deprogramming from implanted controls, while others warned of whistleblowers that were silenced. Critics highlight the theory's origins in recovered memories, often unreliable, and the absence of verifiable proof. Mainstream sources label it hoax, born from Nichols' books, blending fact with fantasy. Yet parallels to declassified programs like MKUltra and synchronized timelines lend credence. If the government once dosed citizens with LSD for mind control, what darker evolutions lurk unspoken? Montauk, real or myth, represents the ultimate influence operation, the control of belief itself. The project allegedly ended in chaos in 1983 when a manifested beast, born from a subject's unleashed psyche, rampaged through the facility, forcing a shutdown. Equipment smashed, memories wiped, the site cemented over and turned into a state park. But the cover-up, believers say, was the final masterstroke. Ridicule the truth seekers, label them conspiracy theorists, and let doubt do the influencing. Today, echoes persist in emerging technologies, neural interfaces, AI-driven propaganda, all tracing back to Montauk's mind-reality fusion.
What if an AI could target your mind from thousands of miles away? Neuro-AI psyops blend brain-computer interfaces with machine learning persuasion. By analyzing EEG patterns, AI can craft tailored messages that bypass your conscious filters, whether through social feeds, on ads, or immersive VR. Early trials show 70% efficacy in shifting opinions without you realizing. This isn't mind control, it's mind steering. When algorithms own your thoughts, who still owns your free will?
March 16th, 2018. The U.S. government's Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, commonly known as DARPA, announces a bold initiative to develop what they call next-generation non-surgical neurotechnology. It is designed to allow the human brain to directly interface with machines.
We know that DARPA is exploring human-machine interfaces that include direct connections between the brain and outside systems. That's been from the beginning of DARPA's information technology mission, and it continues to this day. DARPA has created some of the most influential technologies of all time, things that we use and take for granted every day, including the project that became the internet. They've created self-driving cars, stealth technology, GPS that fits in your pocket. That's DARPA's specialty, to imagine the future and create it.
A new technology that is actually very much on the verge of being a reality that is being fielded is we could have a sensor maybe on the surface of our head, or maybe implanted somewhere in our body, in our brain, or something that allows us to interact directly with our communications gear, our processing gear, our weapon systems, and so on. But now imagine we take that technology and we can control robots at a distance with it. Even fly drones. You put this sensor on and you think the right way, and you can increase the speed of the fan by thinking and controlling that thought with direct-to-mind or mind-machine interfacing. With that type of capability, you could control all sorts of buttons and mechanisms in equipment.
Mind-machine interfaces will have many applications in both civilian and military life. But there are those who believe that this same technology could also be used by DARPA as a new form of mind control. Like their counterparts at the CIA, DARPA-funded researchers have spent decades investigating how the human mind can be altered. In 1965, DARPA launched Project Pandora, which studied the possibility of using microwave radiation to control human behavior. The project reportedly ended in 1969, but DARPA's investigation of how machines can affect and possibly control the brain continues to this day.
There are explicit programs of DARPA to read and write to human brains, whether it's through direct implants within the brain or wearing some kind of cap. So these things are being worked on, and we know that.
So what's the next step? Maybe the next step is we can send instructions and information to an actual person from a distance with this kind of technology to let another person control their actions. But that could be something that could be malicious.
If there's some way to do it from a distance, a much greater distance than something that you can wear on your scalp, that would be the ultimate technological achievement that would fall into this realm of mind control and direct human-machine interface that DARPA may well want to keep secret.
In the near future, DARPA may possess the technology to remotely control the human mind. But as concerning as that may be, according to some scientists, a more permanent kind of mind control technology is looming. And it involves modifying the human brain by altering the human body's DNA.
The future of mind control, and the future being right now because these experiments are being done, is using gene editing tools. And one of them would be CRISPR. The way it works is take the CRISPR, which are these short alternating repeats of DNA. You put that together with an enzyme called Cas. And so you take the CRISPR that you want to use, and you put these pieces together that can be injected and insert this DNA to certain areas of the brain so that we can change brain cells and turn you into something you wouldn't otherwise be. So in this way, gene editing technologies like CRISPR really form a definite basis for future mind control.
These are things that DARPA has investigated. Every technology has the potential for good or evil, and who defines what's good and what's evil, and who uses it for what purpose. These are all questions that have been asked about everything from rockets to self-driving vehicles. We still don't have a good handle on the ethics of various technologies that we use. The technologists tend not to be so concerned with the ethics. That seems to be the domain of other people, policymakers, for example, academics, people like this. There needs to be a hand-in-hand interaction with people creating technology and those who are considering the ethics of that technology.
Skeptical investigations find no concrete evidence, no documents, only stories that they claim grow wilder with time. Forums amplify the lore, while historians trace it to fabricated tales. Balanced views acknowledge the theory's unproven status, yet question. In an era of proven government overreach, can we afford to dismiss it entirely? Montauk Genesis warns us. Influence operations did not begin with the internet. They were born in places like the shadows of Camp Hero, mastering the interface between mind and manipulation. Whether fact or fable, the Montauk Project forces us to confront a chilling possibility. Our realities are not shaped by truth, but by unseen hands. Question the narratives fed to you. Seek the anomalies. For if Montauk taught us anything, it's that the greatest power is the control of perception. The veil lifts, but do you choose to look behind it?